Welcome. Oh, hey, there we go. Faster than I thought. Hey, folks, thanks for tuning in to the Bent Podcast. This is the final episode of our Falcon and Winter Soldier reaction show, and we are very grateful to have Mr. Lewis Porter Jr. right over here joining us today. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good.
All right. And as most of you probably know, Lewis Porter Jr. is a publisher of RPGs. It seems like most of what I'm seeing from you these days is Mutants and Mastermind stuff. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I got my superhero bug back again. So. I try to get out of it. I really do. But it's like,
they're like the mob. They keep pulling you back in.
It's like it's incredible. I'm 51, and if I could go back in time and tell my 15-year-old self, "Hey, keep reading those comics, buddy. It's going to be bigger than you can ever imagine." You're like, what are you talking about? Trust me, I know. Oh yeah, this is, I guess, comic book fan paradise. You've got Marvel with all its shows, all its movies. DC has stuff on, and then they've got Invincible on Amazon. I'm just like, this is crazy.
It is the golden age of superhero media, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's so weird to me.
And Jacob Blackman is saying Eminem by LPJ is great. In the comments, Jacob, I actually thought you were joining this podcast. I appreciate you being in the comments. I sent you a link if you want to pop in and talk with us over video. So, but appreciate you being in the comments.
Jacob will not be postulating the future of anything.
That's his whole deal. He refuses to postulate. And of course, the show is over now. All we can postulate about is the next show. And also, there's Captain America 4.
Yeah, confirmed with Mackie as Captain America, which is fantastic. Can't wait to see that.
Yeah. Hey, there's Mike Mylar. Hey, Mike Mylar of Ian World Publishing. How are you, sir?
I'm not of Ian World Publishing. I'm good.
Okay, cool. We finish up introductions. I've got Lewis and Mike. Also, Jason Tandro Paizo. Hey, Jason.
Hey, everybody. Good to be here.
And Jim Seals of various publishers and out there in California with a Captain America shield on his wall. How are you doing, sir?
I am good.
Yeah, right. Jim bought his admission with that shield. Like, that gives him the right to be here.
It was actually given to me, and I didn't tone it down.
Nice.
So, let's talk. Who wants to go first? Mike, you said you took notes. So
yeah, Mike's got notes. So we really
do. So much of that episode was just fighting. It was like 25 minutes maybe of solid just action shots.
Yeah.
Kind of. It with the pacing of everything else in the series, like, it was completely different. So I wasn't ready for that, and it felt like a ride that was going too fast, In the context of the movies where they hit you with that, that's okay, because like they tend to space it out a little bit more and they pad it. But this one, it was just like, and now my speech. And we'll do a little bit of exposition. Here's your Zemo moment to everybody.
Yeah.
We're all going to go home. Oh, wait, no. Sharon Carter. So, yeah, it was a little weird on the pacing. And then, for all the fighting and, all the build-up with Batroc, what did we get? We got, 30 seconds of him and Sam punching each other, and that was all. Yeah. Although I did like the catch of the shield in midair. As ridiculous as I know they're action stories, Jacob, but
Jacob is not on the show, but is somehow also very much on the show.
I respect that.
Yeah.
Lewis, I thought you had something you wanted to say there for a second.
No, I respect that kind of energy. If you're gonna be off the show and but on it, that's how you do it. But let's be honest. The show, it needed more action. They have all that money. They spent a lot on special effects. And the action had been good up to that point. I've been very happy for what I'd seen. But you knew they were going to be like, okay, let's dump all the money here on this episode. You've got to dump everything. Because it's going to be, look, let's be honest. He's going to carry the franchise for at least the next 5 to 10 years.
Sure.
And, that's got to be, a tough job for anybody, normal, let alone hey, you were the sidekick. Now you're going to be the prime guy, and we're going to put everything on you, and we're going to have a female Thor. And we're probably not sure about the whole Iron Man position, and that's.
Did you guys see the interview with Mackie where he talked about how his son saw the Avengers Endgame and talked to him about being Captain America?
No, that's awesome.
Like, okay, so they go and they watch the movie, and his son watches the show with him, and at the end he like looks up and says, "Are you Captain America now?" He's like, "I guess I kind of am." And the kid's like, "Oh, okay," and that was it. Like, and Mackey's like, "That's it? That's all I get?" Well, okay, whatever. Days later, his son calls him, bawling, saying like, "Oh, you're Captain America, and I'm so proud of you." And Mackey's like, "I'm proud of you," and they're both crying, right? And Mackey's like, "That's who I make my movies for. Like, all I care about is if my son is proud of me. If I don't care what anybody else says. If my son thinks I'm cool, I'm cool." Right? And I just really thought it was a great bit.
No.
Yeah, there you go.
It's weirdly interesting to see how well this whole thing for Marvel is done. I mean, because let's be honest, it could have gone sideways at any given time.
Sure.
And you know,
once upon a time, comic book movies almost always did go sideways.
right.
I was just thinking earlier today about how many Punisher movies there are.
And you'd think it'd be easier for people. It's like, look, we've got comic books, we can grab from the stories, we've already got stuff plotted out, you can put the visuals up, you don't have to do a lot of work. You know,
the storyboard is there, but
I would take issue with that. I think that a comic book is just made physically in a very different way than a movie, and so its storytelling requirements are very different. I mean, I don't disagree with you in terms of comics being a huge R&D pool for film, but you can't just take a script and take a comic and put it on the film unless you're Frank Miller's Sin City, and quite frankly, it was kind of boring. Right?
Have you seen Watchmen by Zack Snyder?
I was about to say Watchmen was pretty.
I've seen it, and it's not as faithful to the comics as many people think. But that's a topic for another episode.
I don't
The
want
bigger tell is Ang Lee's Hulk.
Wow.
Oh.
Really? Reb? Really hurt
Oh, we're
me.
going all the way back there. That's when he used the shield as the windshield for his motorcycle.
Yeah.
Which is a
We're
good
talking
idea.
about how adaptations go wrong. That's my entire point. So.
Well, Ang Lee tried to make his Hulk movie like a comic book, which is why it has more transitions and cuts in it than the average music video, which is insane. It's like every 3.17 seconds, that movie will bubble cut or jump or fade or there'll be a transition.
Well, we're not in 2003, so we don't have to talk about Ang Lee's Hulk. We all in 2021, and we now have a new Captain America.
Yeah,
and we have the final episode, and to Mike's point, I felt that the action was jarring. I think one of the problems with it was up until this point, the action has been really good about showing us the space and the geometry that people were fighting in terms of relationships to each other. And I don't feel that this episode does that. I was confused as to where Carly was in relation to, was she at the construction site the entire time? Was she at the building? She was responding to Sam's entrance, to Captain America's entrance, as if she was there. She was looking up going, oh, he's on the move, go now. But it kind of seemed like she doesn't have to transport from that location to the construction site the way Bucky does, or the way the two trucks do. So I was really confused about that. And also the geometry of the space in terms of, why is Bucky going upstairs to grab a phone call that he didn't know he was going to get, to go back downstairs? Where was the parking garage in relationship to the building? These are things that confuse me, so that for the first 25 minutes, until we get Sam versus Carly, which is staged, and we do know the geometry of that space, and we are given character of Sam's not going to fight.
Yeah.
Like, Sam is not fighting to win. He's fighting for the soul of Conley, and he fundamentally loses that point. But up until that point, after Sam makes his entrance as Cap, I kind of checked out.
Yeah. So
I'm glad you said you found the action confusing, because I thought it was just me not paying attention.
The whole thing in this warehouse. It's a messy affair.
I stepping away from the confusion of the actionness of the episode, and I do agree it felt short. I remember when the episode finished, and I was like, this was like 45 minutes for the whole episode, But a broader, I felt like the main beats for Sam and Buck were handled pretty well. I liked the way that their stories were resolved. And I thought that the Isaiah scenes were a fairly good finish to his story, or at least the part of it that we saw in this show. However, I think the supporting characters and the other characters in the show all got kind of done dirty. And I was really dissatisfied, especially with John Walker, who this show spends 5 episodes teaching us how to hate him. And he is a sociopathic killer, and he lies to a grieving family to their face. But in this episode, he gets to make a Lincoln joke, and Buck like slaps him on the back, and it's like the end of a Chips episode. And I was like, okay, I am calling bullshit. Like that is not that. And I felt like, so you guys know Film Crit Hulk? He has this observation that it's often at the end of the show, in the last episode, that you see if the showrunners knew where it was going to go the whole time. And I feel like the show that I have been watching for the last 5 episodes does not land where that show would land. It's got like this weird turn at the end that is not the ending of the show I've been watching. It's a different show's ending.
But Jason, it's a Lincoln Project nod. He literally quotes Lincoln, and that's the thing that gets him out of jail free card.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I hated it. Like the moment that happens, and then all Sam does is give him a nod, like from one captain to another.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this guy killed someone with Steve's shield 2 episodes ago.
So you're saying that he quotes Lincoln, and that's a reference to the conservative Lincoln Project.
And that's sort of like including that, like, because now, okay, so Sam goes from being involved in this show that we can comment on race, and we can comment on socioeconomic issues, and then it has to go into Captain America 4, and Captain America 4 has to be a product that conservatives buy into, as well as liberals, as like the Marvel movies have to make money, and I kind of feel like that was the tone.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Like that, and they had to make Walker marketable again. It was really unfortunate. Like that was badly done.
That's probably why they pulled in Julia Louis-Dreyfus, because like that's some, like, she has Seinfeld money. She didn't need to do anything, right? Like
she must have wanted to do it. She must
exactly
want it. But okay, let's be honest too. Walker's story in the comics works better for what happened. I mean, yeah, Battlestar got killed, but that could have been drawn out differently. I mean, having it be, in the comics, it was his parents, so it made a lot of sense. It was about a group that very much, the Watchdogs were very much like a semi KKK, Oath Keepers kind of situation, and that could have been a stronger pull. Sure. And I go back and say I think both of them had super soldier serum when they were fighting on the top of that truck. Because once again, it's like the serum makes you stronger, gives you all the cool stuff. But if you're a normal human being and you're fighting against them, you're going to lose. I mean, even, highly skilled guys can figure it out a little bit better. But those guys aren't ready for that kind of fight, especially the 3-on-1. And it's like
we spent 5 episodes hearing how the super soldier serum makes you a more extreme version of the person you already were. We see how it affects Walker. And then in the last episode, he just gets to shake his head once, and now suddenly he's a good guy again.
I don't even think I think it's more of the situation of he was in a situation that things do happen on the battlefield. Let's be honest. Best friend dies. You may have some issues with somebody who's done that. You may not keep you might forget where you are, what you're doing, and it's that here's the guy who took the hit for me. Now I'm angry, and you're trying to run, and I've been trying to stop you, and even worse, I'm trying to be Captain America, and he's not Captain America, and
the character could have been sympathetic, and obviously you saw him as more sympathetic than me. But to me, the show made him out to be the bad guy, and then suddenly at the end they say, no, I'm back, and it's like, okay, he gets to be U.S. agent, and he gets off with no penalty. No penalty.
Well, that's kind of what he did in the comic too.
Yeah, I don't care. I don't care about the comic. I care about the show.
But I have to give them credit for sticking to that, because it's like I can see him joining the Avengers just like he joined the West Coast Avengers and being because the whole issue was that he was always a problem for that team, was he wanted to follow the rules and like that. And I think you can't have a team of everybody's awesome. Everybody's awesome in the Avengers. It's like, where's the dick in the Avengers? There's
And
no
like
dick in the
a lot
Avengers.
of the Avengers is about redemption too, right? Like swords.
Well-
And I don't want to get too like Silver Agey, but like Hawkeye, for instance, was originally like this criminal part of a whole thing.
Don't get me started with that. Every one of those guys are criminals.
Yeah.
The Avengers are really the masters of evil.
Yeah, before we get too far, we're talking about Jacob, who was in the comments, and now like a guy running in from the stands in a wrestling match with a steel chair. Jacob has joined us.
Actually, Hawkeye was never actually a criminal. He wanted to be a hero. He was framed as a criminal by the Black Widow.
Did he not assault Iron Man first? That's kind of criminal to me. That looks like a felony to me.
Haven't we all wanted to assault Iron
manipulated
Man?
after being manipulated by the Black Widow.
If every time a Marvel hero fights another Marvel hero, they're a criminal, then you're right. The entire comics lie or villain.
Well, I mean, isn't the MCU though, especially all about redemption arcs? I mean, Thor's origin story is a redemption arc. Tony Stark's whole arc is a redemption story.
Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch.
But yes, if you look at how Silver Age Hawkeye was portrayed, he was the dick of the team back when he joined the Avengers.
But he eventually got better over time and became. But like,
were you guys not bruised by the metaphor of the NYPD van?
Oh,
And
I
John
was
Walker,
watching,
like, trying to pull it up and fighting away his demons and failing, getting dragged down, and then freaking Sam showing up and then using technology to overcompensate where this, like, flawed super soldier, like, that was like, so obvious. And it was almost painful to watch the second time I watched it. I was like,
For you.
So, were the scriptwriters having trouble deciding if Carly was sympathetic or not?
yes.
yeah. Well,
Well, those the acting, and then those the screenplay. Those what people are telling us about the character versus how it's portrayed. And that actress brought a lot of humanity to Carly that I think sort of like throws us off as a viewer because we're also accepting it visuals and we're hearing it. So when everyone's like, she's a terrorist, well, we're obviously on Sam's side. So that when he gives the lecture at the end, that these people were all willing to stand up and that these will not just the super soldiers themselves, the ones wearing the hockey mask with the red handprint on it, but just the average citizens that were on that app that were responding against like standing up and part of the movement. I do hate that superhero fiction demonizes movements. Like we've had that in Dark Knight Rises with Bane's like throwing over the government, and now we have a repeat of that here where they're still like the refugees are kind of the bad guys. But I brought that up like last episode.
So, can we talk about the sorry, Mike, go ahead.
oh no, I just had a good point. What was it? I bet in the original script that she was much more sympathetic, and that part of what we suffered here is like fast, immediate rewrites, because they pulled all that pandemic stuff out, right?
Right,
and it's it's just like everyone's like dying, like we've all got our arms are falling off from leprosy, like that's much more easy to sympathize than with like we're hungry and being treated poorly by these governments. Which isn't to say that's not bad when that happens, but like
arms falling off is very Iron Age, though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, whatever they had planned. I don't know. Did anybody see any stills of what the pandemic was supposed to look like for them? Or
I don't know if they made it to the cutter, if that made it to the filming stage or not.
As another example of what kind of bugged me about this episode, and Jim, you mentioned Sam's speech at the end, and I thought it was great to give him, in many ways, Captain America isn't just the great fighter. That's like the least important part of what makes him Captain America, right? What makes him Captain America is if people treat him like Captain America, if he can command the respect of Captain America, and if he has the values of Captain America and is willing to talk about them. Like Captain America would not be right if he didn't give moralizing lectures at the end of every episode, right? So he gets up and he gives this lecture, and I loved it because it was very distinctively Sam. He talks about race. He addresses race in his speech, which I thought was great. And so they give us this great speech where he talks to this senator about how you have to do better, man. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Then what's the very next thing we see that senator do? He he plays the chump to Sharon Carter, right? So by doing what Sam urged him to do, by showing mercy and extending Sharon Carter citizenship and a pardon, he's actually doing the bad guy's bidding, and Sharon Carter gets to be her double agent or Skrull or whatever it is that people think that she is. And I thought, man, like, why do you do this to Sam? Why do you give him the cool moment and then undercut it by having him his good job act to just be like, you know, a chump failure.
Jason, haven't you ever heard that doing good things always end up bad? That's how it always works.
I don't buy that. No, I have heard that, and I call shenanigans on that.
To Jason's point, the thing I did love about the Sam speech, and that's when I got reinvested into it, was the difference between Sam and Steve is when Steve moralizes, it's a top-down lecture. Even in the comics, when he's talking to Spider-Man in Civil War and he gives that speech about no, you move, you know, it's pointing downward at Peter. What you've seen Sam do in this show is he's a community organizer.
Yeah.
He gets the whole community together to help him with the boat. Yeah. He gets buy-in from other people. He gets the helicopter pilot really glad that she wasn't moved to the van. But we get the helicopter pilot to help him out. Like, he's not above asking for help.
Yeah.
And the way he talks about it is he talks about it trying to build consensus.
Yeah.
And the other two people in that speech, not the senator, but the other two people who are part of the JLC, they accept they're more willing to accept what he's saying, but he's kind of have to browbeat the senator. And to Jason's point, like the exact opposite thing that he does, like the exact next thing we see him do is set up the big meta plot for the. Are we just going to watch the dance, Zemo? Is that?
It's 1 hour and 8 minutes of Zemo dancing. Why not? We'll have to talk about Zemo's final bit that Mike brought up at some point here.
Oh, I love Zemo's bit.
I knew that he wasn't done. Like, I was like, okay, they caught him, but like he let himself in. Like he's already done whatever he's gonna do, and like it was you know, I still feel bad about liking Zemo so much.
Why? He was. I mean, that was a great move for Zemo.
But I have trouble separating comic book Nazi Zemo and
even
MCU Zemo.
Even Nazi Zemo is pretty interesting. Thunderbolts, once again, is a great setup, and it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And for a guy who lost his face, he's done some pretty cool things as a villain. With like no powers,
blue.
It's like he's very much the kind of villain you want to see. It's like, I don't have any powers. I'm not flashy. I just manipulate everything else.
I got a sword.
We
didn't see the sword. I was kind of sad about that.
Yeah. I agree with Mike. I think that that the actors playing these characters, like Jim was talking about, the way that the woman playing Carly brought so much sympathy to the role. Like the performers, quite frankly, I thought outperformed the script in this final episode.
Yeah.
Well, this final episode was mostly action sequences.
Yeah.
And like, can we talk about like the meta plot, like the Marvel Cinematic Universe meta plot?
Yeah.
So I kind of feel this show succeeds where WandaVision failed. So WandaVision told a story about loss and acceptance. It told a story about an ending. But the Wanda, the Scarlet Witch, has to show up in other media. So it's not necessarily an end. The Vision has to continue on in some form or another. So we get the White Vision. So we get these things that undercut the theme of the show. The theme of this show, and like you can agree or not, like it's just my interpretation. But the theme of this show is about picking up the baton, what it means to you, and in relation to what you're going to do with that baton. Because we see two people have the shield, and two drastically different scenarios are played out with that shield in these 6 episodes, and it also gets to perpetuating the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because now we know Captain America, Sam Wilson, is going to be in Captain America 4. Like, I think it does a better job of servicing the needs of the larger cinematic universe than, say, WandaVision did.
Can I make a? This really bugged me, and you talk about undercutting the theme. The scene with Bucky, where he's talking to the guy whose son he killed.
Yeah,
and he cuts away.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't you want to kind of let that play a little bit more? I mean, that seems like that's.
Well, I think I thought about that because I remember thinking as I was watching it, I thought, are they going to show it to us? Are they going to show us Bucky actually explaining all, or Apollo? Are they showed Bucky? He says like they show him like sort of that 3 stages, right? Where he says he was assassinated, he was murdered by the Winter Soldier, step 2, and that person was me, right? Like that's the 3rd step in his I'll get there kind of journey. And then he explains I didn't have a choice, and then that's the end of the scene. Is there going to be a long conversation? Like, what happens? How does the father react? We never see it. I think that maybe that would have been too long and too much for the pacing of the episode, right?
Well,
I
think as Jacob said back in the comments, it's an action show. So I'm sorry,
Yeah.
it didn't mean to cut you off.
I just think as as parent or you got a parent, you don't have to play that out because that is easy to understand.
Yeah, I think Lewis is right. Like we all kind of know what because the father's not going to forgive him, right? Like, and we needed to. I don't know if we needed to see it or not. Jim, you got a thought?
So I don't think we needed to see the acting out sequence. We don't need the dialogue. What we need to have seen is when Bucky moments later is outside that window. What we need to have seen is the dad looks at him and then the dad's reaction shot. Not the girlfriend, not the pseudo false date person, and it's that wistful romantic like ships passing in the night bit. We needed to see some sort of, even if it was just a neutral expression on the dad's face, like no nod or anything, just to be like, okay, that is a life I can't ever access again. Because at that point, I was like, okay, where's my sad piano music? That's the Incredible Hulk moment, right?
But that's the metaphor why he's outside looking through the glass.
Yeah, you're right. But you're right. The metaphor does it, but we could have got that look from the old guy looking up, Bucky in the window.
I can't. I've never lost a child, knock on wood. But my wife passed away, of course, and I know how my mother-in-law was. She never was the same. So I don't think you don't have to show that. That is, you're never going to be the same. You're never going to feel right about that. It wouldn't matter if this guy was Jesus Christ. It's not going to work out well for you.
It was like a snap resolution, though.
Yeah, but I mean,
it was there and
gone. Drag that out because I mean, really, the point was about Bucky doing the thing he didn't want to do.
It's making me wonder like how much stuff ended up getting cut and thrown on the floor. Like we got just a little bit of Eli, and I feel like if they had been able to give him a vaccination and would have known when his production schedule and they can move into this thing and that thing, it would have been different.
Well,
but
it's there's a lot of setup on 4. I mean, there could be a lot of great stuff we're going to talk about Young Avengers because let's be honest, they're moving towards that like a rock.
Yeah, right. So, I was going to say when you were talking about WandaVision, like we already got 2 right there. Boom.
Right.
So there was little servicing of the MCU, but
right. So I think they're smart enough to plan. They know we got some future stuff we've got to do. We've got to set things up in a certain way, and that's how we're going to do it.
Well,
and
they didn't know the pandemic was coming, and like that actor for Eli is definitely not like 18. So I don't know when he's gonna be able to get his shots, and like that's what I'm saying.
But with anything, we can always swipe people out. We won't even think about it. Oh, you like them? It doesn't matter. We got somebody new. Get used to this new person.
I think Jacob has a statement.
But I think one of the reasons they cleared out that scene so quickly was because we'd already had an entire series about grief.
Yeah.
So we didn't need to linger on that anymore.
Maybe so. I suspect they just cut it for pacing.
Exactly.
They wanted to make it as short as possible.
Yeah.
And they jammed so much visual metaphor into this episode. It was like every shot that wasn't moving around.
Can I talk about one little? Speaking of, and that's John Walker's decision to place his Medal of Honor on the inside of his shield. So this is really interesting because I'm an Arthurian nerd, and this is actually an Arthurian thing. So King Arthur is famous for having a shield with the Virgin Mary on it, but it's not on the outside. Everybody always draws it, or we always see it in art with Virgin Mary on the outside of the shield, but it's not on the outside shield. It's on the inside of the shield, so that he's the one that sees it, so that he can be inspired by the Virgin Mary whenever he's in pain or suffering, right?
No, it's no, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, and so it was really interesting to see. I had to actually have somebody else explain it because I didn't really realize this is kind of a failure of the episode for me, at least on my first watching. I didn't really get what was happening there. I knew that he had his medal and he was somehow attaching it to the shield. We saw that at the end of last episode. But I didn't really understand that he put it on the inside and that he was actually looking at it at that moment. I had to have somebody else explain it to me. But now I get it. And it was kind of a cool Arthurian thing.
I remember when I was drinking heavily, living in Tucson, and I was doing a lot of SCA stuff. That's how I'm justifying it. There were guys I knew who would have inspirational quotes or images on the inside of their shield.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and some of it's just getting into character, and some of it's when you're on a shield wall and you're holding you're like that for kind of a long time sometimes.
I want to remind everybody that this show was written by somebody who mentioned The Hobbit, the Chronicles of Narnia, and now this medieval shield thing. Like somebody's a fantasy fan inside this writer's room.
There's the one big problem I had with the Luke Cage show on Netflix was that every once in a while they would stop and they almost winked at the camera. There was a bit where Luke was hanging out in the barbershop in Harlem, and they stop and start talking about 1970s pulp.
Yeah.
Referencing some like Shaft and stuff. And when they meet Zemo in his cell and he's reading fucking Machiavelli, and I'm like, oh, okay, you can't just put up a sign that says this guy's a clever villain. You gotta have him reading Machiavelli in his bunk in prison. At the end, he's reading the same goddamn book. I'm like, oh, yeah, yeah.
But Machiavelli tied into the overall plot, which Sam even actually addresses at the end of this in his speech. He says something like, about you have all the power. What are you going to do with it? Like which is the point of this entire show, right? Is along with the inheriting the mantle question. But a lot of this is about means to an end. Do the ends justify the means? How do you use the power that you have? And we've talked about Sam and Bucky and where they all are on that continuum. And so the Machiavelli name title drop was not just a gratuitous, you're a smart guy, but it was also cluing us into the overall questions that the whole show was asking.
But Marvel's done that also with Magneto, with the Once and Future King, when he's reading it. It's always it's a connection back to books, which I think is a smart idea because most people don't read books.
Hey, I can literally point you to the articles that list every single time the Once and Future King has shown up in X-Men. Like
we can do
that.
It's like we know if you see someone with a book, we read books because we are a special group of people. Let's be honest, but the masses don't read books. The masses can't spell book, so it is what it is. And you say, oh, he's reading a book. He must be the smart one. It's like, you can't have him just say, I'm smart, because no one's going to believe that.
Also, it's you don't want to ever put anything in your story that isn't going to be used. So if a character is reading a book, you want to make sure that book has some sort of relevance either to the character or the overall themes of the show. Like even the X-Men cartoon show, when they gave Beast poetry, like those specific lines of poetry he's citing. Like those are reason he's doing that. And if, when you're 8 watching the show, you're like, it's cool. He's just quoting something. But when you go back and you revisit it, if you can go through the awful animation, and I love that show, don't at me. But if you can sit through the animation, you're like, oh, okay, you're making the connection over here.
And I can see your point completely. It's a good shorthand for saying, remember, this guy, he's the intelligent manipulator, and that's great. I'm just being a pretentious fuck and saying maybe it's a little too on the nose. That's the only thing I'm saying. Maybe I want him reading beat poetry. Maybe I want him reading, a comic book or something just a little left to center you wouldn't quite expect. He's. But anyway,
what would have been more interesting is if he was reading The Great Escape.
Or it could be Thomas Hobbes' Leviathan as the commentary of like dystopian systems and the power that we need to overthrow them.
Look at the big brain on Jim.
Mythologies.
Yeah, like you can ground it with any book. Like Machiavelli is because everyone knows from general cultural osmosis, everyone sort of has a clue what Machiavelli means.
Yeah, there's a word
Yeah, that's true.
Machiavellian.
Yeah.
Like, there's,
Well, I'm just saying that if he's reading 50 Shades of Grey, it's a different moment. That's all.
That would be different. It'd be different, at least, you know.
It's
might be the
slowly-
She-Hulk
slowly in
show.
prison. The She-Hulk
Yeah.
show. Yeah.
Yeah.
He would be perfect for the She-Hulk show.
I'm
So-
not touching that one.
Fair enough.
so we've got the Loki show is next,
It is.
right? And
Yeah.
we've already they're doing pretty good at hooking us into keeping our subscriptions to Disney Plus. I think
Well-
that's for a month.
It depends on which you consider next, the Loki show or the MODOK show.
Oh right, MODOK. Yeah.
Well, there's also What If is coming to Disney Plus real soon, and I kind of want to see the episode where Agent Carter gets the serum and Steve Rogers is in a giant, proto Iron Man suit. That was in the trailer. That was kind of interesting. So
Sounds awesome.
I mean, that might be the best thing for them. It's like, What If is always a fun series. It's
Yeah.
always interesting, and it's like, you can mash up stories till you get tired of that, and they know that. It's like, it can be a lot of fun.
I just don't want to be depressed after 30 minutes of animation. Because every What If comic, most of them, 90% of the What If comics.
and then everyone died.
Yes, they're just like a depressing, what if Elektra lived? And I was so excited to get that comic. So excited to get that comic until I read it. And then I was just sad and depressed when I was a little kid.
But that's changed now. Like that new What If stories aren't like that anymore, right? Like they're more like the DC Elseworlds, where they have a little more creative freedom. There was a long mandate that the Marvel official canon always had to be the best possible version of every universe.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody would always suffer and die. And I read those too. But we've established that there's a multiverse in the Marvel universe now. And so these may not be what ifs. They might be alternate realities where these things are actually true. This is a plot point in the Loki show. So I'm eager to watch it. And the Loki looks great.
Yeah, Tom Hiddleston is a compelling actor. I'm looking forward to it. Disney Plus is staggering things nicely, because after this, I've got to watch The Bad Batch, which is like in 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
Then there's What If shortly after that. Then there's Loki in June.
That's
So
Yeah.
it's they got me hooked, unfortunately. And then why am I going to drop it? In late summer when it's just 3 months away from the Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian 3. So
yeah.
I mean, Disney knows what they're doing. I mean, they pulled off, let's be honest, a minor miracle. This has been impressive. I mean, who would have thought the Scarlet Witch WandaVision would be such a big hit for them?
This idea of not making an ongoing show. There's no ongoing series here. Everything is like a 6-episode miniseries, and using that to fill in essentially an entire year, so that and keep everybody coming back. It's very interesting, and I like it because you don't get too tied down to one main storyline. You can kind of mine it for just the good parts.
Right.
You can just do 6 episodes of really great story, and then move on to the next really great story with all different characters. It's kind of like what I wanted the Star Trek series to be when we first started.
I was just going to say that.
There you go. Instead of Discovery, which is an ongoing series with one crew, that it was going to be kind of like American Horror Story, where every year they would do a different crew on a different era of this Trek history, and we'd have different stories every season. And it's kind of like that.
I'm sure if one of our British friends were here, they would tell us they've been doing TV that way for decades now. So
There you go.
Yeah,
Well, we haven't figured it out yet, though. I mean, let's be honest. That kind of TV is a smart idea, but for some reason, we want to just put shows out and just suck the blood out of them. It's like, I always go back to Babylon 5.
Yeah.
They said we're going 5 years. That's all we're doing. And people are like, what? That's crazy. No, it's like, no, 5 years. You got a story, beginning, middle, end, boom, package great. And people are afraid to do that, especially in American stuff.
And to your point, every time they've revisited Babylon 5, it's always been lesser than. It has always, whether it's Crusade or any of the made-for-TV movies, they've always been because it's not built into the structure of the narrative.
Well, there were reasons to make shows that long, because once you could have enough episodes, you could go into syndication, right?
Mhm.
And now people don't want to. There's a different model now, as John Rogers has put it, and the guy who created Leverage and The Librarians and so on. He's got a little sticky note tacked to his wallboard that says, "You are now in the miniseries business." That's not because he wants to do it. Like, he wants to do serial television that goes for 5 years, right? And there's a lot of beauty in that show, and he knows how to do that, but nobody's buying that anymore.
Yeah,
They don't
but
want to buy
even think about the commitment to do a 5-year show. It's like why can't we just get the purest, best story done in a very short amount of time? And I've always been about 13 episodes, 8 episodes, 6. I think that's reasonable. I watch a lot of Canadian TV for some weird reason, and their shows are very much like that setup. And I was like, why are Americans doing 23, 24 episodes? And like, let's be honest, a third of them are filler. A third of them are 100% filler. It's like, what are we doing here? You know, I mean, Star Trek is a prime example of that. There's some awful shows, some awful, and I mean Next Gen. I will never say about DS9; it's my favorite, but Voyager and even Enterprise. It's like, why did you guys do this? You could have saved a lot of time, made it smaller, made it more exact. There's a show that I tell everybody about every time I get a chance. Continuum. It's a brilliant science fiction idea, well done, and time travel done perfectly. And it's like, oh, that's interesting, and I love it. And you know, they landed 4 seasons, 4 or 5, but I think it was 4. They did it in a way. It was like, we're gonna just show you what happened, and how they ended it was brilliant because they did something that I haven't seen anytime. I don't think I've ever seen it on TV in like this way. You know, it's like everything was right. Everything was right. Yeah. I mean, good Lord. Just one of the basic ideas. They give her a suit that gets all these powers and it's great, but the suit gets damaged in the beginning, like in the middle part of the first season. So now she's got to go back to being like everybody else.
Well, I mean, so the American models for both film and television are vastly different than either in Canada or Britain, where there's way more government funding and stuff for that kind of thing. Like BBC is a government entity. So like they're gonna squeeze all the blood out of the rock, no matter what it is. But how many Tremors movies are there? And they've all sucked after the second one.
But I mean, at some point, like at least now with the internet, there's gonna be a point where people are gonna be like, I'm not going to a network. I'm just gonna do this thing via YouTube, or I'm gonna find something else and do it somewhere else, and I'm just gonna generate the money that way. Because with Kickstarter and everything else, you can do stuff you couldn't do 10, 15 years ago.
That's true.
Well, to that point, we're starting to see the networks coming into the streaming venue. We got the Peacock streaming service. We have the CBS Paramount Plus streaming.
It's all old stuff. I mean, they're new stuff. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. The 6 of us could sit down in a room and do a series 10 times better than them, not even trying hard. Our biggest default is we don't have the money for it. That's it. That's our biggest default.
Well, and we also don't have any of the logistical concerns. Like, it's one thing to sit here and spitball a TV show, but we don't have like people, physics. We don't have the money. Yes, that's a huge part of it, but we also don't have, the crew.
But watch this. I'm gonna freak you out with this thing. They said the same thing about music.
Okay.
Now music, I don't need a studio. I got a computer. I got a microphone, and I can make my own thing.
I am in personal contact with a film crew who I could get in touch with in 30 seconds.
I think
corrected.
Guys, all of this, I could make this show better than anybody else. Like, you guys, this is not a flattering look, gang.
There was one thing I do want to talk about in terms of like Sam. Like, if we So I made a post on my Twitter feed, and if anyone follows me, you know that occasionally the wrestling bleeds in, like it just does. Yeah. Like, I can't help it. It's
Talk
just
about bleeding the stone. WrestleMania 37.
I'm not. Don't no. Anyway, so the thing is. Okay, so when Sam is used prior to this TV show, and this is what I want to give credence to Marvel Studios and to the executives in charge of this particular TV show. When Sam was given the shield at the end of Endgame, if he had shown up at Captain America 4, and he was just given the shield, and we didn't interrogate him as a character, he'd still be considered the lesser than. Like, he would have been the wrestler who needed the title. Now, because we've had 6 episodes, he's now he has the title, he's owned the title, and we're all behind him because we saw his struggle. We saw him tone it down. We saw, oh my goodness, those are advertisement on the screen.
But I mean, I mean, let's be honest. Have we accepted him? Because I mean, there's some people are going to say John Walker is still the legitimate Captain America, which I think is a great little way to play it too. Because him being the U.S. agent and Sam wearing the red, white, and blue, it makes a nice dichotomy. Because some people are going to love U.S. agent because that's how they would have acted. Some people will love Sam for that, and Bucky is still that in between unknown situation.
There was an awful lot of the comics run with Sam as Cap, where he was having to deal with certain elements of the public,
Right?
Like you're not my Captain America.
Well, that's
Yeah.
and he addresses that in that speech, which I think is a great part of that speech, where he says, "Look, like every time I pick up the shield, there are going to be people that are going to hate me for it, and I can feel that right now." He says, "Like
Right.
there are people in this crowd," and he's talking to audience members who don't want a black Captain America, who want John Walker to be Captain America. And I love that. And it's like, well, this was sort of his conversation with Isaiah, right? Because Isaiah's like, they'll never accept you. But I love that it's totally in Sam's character to like, okay, you're right, but I'm going to do it anyway because I'm not going to let anybody tell me what I can't do. Right. Like, and Sam's a fighter, man. And he's like, okay, so yeah, I get beat up once in a while and I lost a fight, whatever, but I'm going to get up and get back in there. And that's the critical difference between him and Isaiah. And Isaiah's point is totally valid, but Sam's character says, no, I'm going to do it anyway. And I love it.
But Sam didn't have to suffer 30 years in a box.
You're right.
It's like, it's easy to be the hero when you don't have
Sure.
to, it's like Isaiah. I mean, it's like all you do is put on a costume and then you got 30 years in prison. And on top of that,
as I say, Isaiah's point is totally valid.
Right.
And Sam acknowledges it.
I mean, that's why I'd love to see if they're going to do Truth as a series. I think that would be pushing it too far. I don't think Marvel will ever do something that radical, because I'm like, doing that series, you've got to accept some things that people in America don't want to accept.
There's a lot of ugly truth that Disney doesn't really want to sell,
Right. And I get it, and I'm okay with that. I mean, look, I'm a fan. I get it. Let's move on. But let's not be afraid to tell.
Honestly, I think the biggest challenge to doing a Truth miniseries now is you've already spoiled the ending. I mean, everybody knows the plot already. We've met today, and he's told us that. And I taught Truth. Like, I taught Truth to a classroom full of college students. So I'm a huge fan of that book.
Did you ever have a moment where a kid just wasn't accepting the book well, and you could just say, you can't handle the truth? Because as a professor, I would have a hard time not using that line, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, this is why you're not in higher education.
Indeed.
But you'll have to wait a while, I think. Like, you wait a few years for the memory of this particular episode to fade, and then maybe we could get like a 6-episode Truth show, which would be fantastic. I would love to see it.
I would love to live in a world where that could happen. That would be a cool thing.
They've already revealed the entire storyline. All the most controversial elements of Truth are now canon. So there's no reason why they can't.
It's just a matter of whether or not the audience will be accepting of seeing it as opposed to hearing it.
For sure.
I've just got to remind myself to slip that in when I next run my Marvel campaign of the conservative following of hashtag not my Captain America.
Yeah.
And John Walker being the real Captain America that all the conservatives want. I've got to remember to do that.
Didn't Watchmen do a very controversial race series?
Yeah, but not. I mean, it's one thing, but that's true. I mean, that's fiction, but not fiction. I mean, the whole Green Street massacre.
I haven't read the Truth comic book, so I'm just like, I was like looking at the wiki.
But I mean, it's like the base behind Truth. I mean, the Tuskegee experiments is true American history, and it's an ugly part of American history. And it's still there's some problems going on today because of it.
Yeah.
And it's if we want to be adults, we've got to handle the situations that have happened, good, bad, and otherwise. But I mean, Churchill said it best: America always does the right thing when they've exhausted every other option.
Yeah.
That's a great quote.
That's a good quote. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we do. We know it, but it's just like just for once, let's just knuckle down and just take the L and keep it moving.
I really wish we would.
The timing of this, well, I mean, no one planned it, but there was that big verdict in the big racially charged case that just came out the same week as this, and it. I don't think I'm prepared to comment on that in the context of a superhero show. but it.
This might have been the best thing for them too. I mean, this timing and this is happening. It's like these things happen, and it just. I always say I get to give Marvel credit where credit's due. They could have put Captain America, the Falcon and Winter Soldier first, and then did Scarlet Witch. Mm-hmm. And if things had worked out like they planned, we would have loved this probably just as much, having come off the big high from Endgame, and that's great. And then Scarlet Witch is this is so crazy, but I think doing it in reverse actually was a better choice for them in the long run.
Well, like I said last episode, we also know that Black Widow was supposed to already be out by now because Val appears in Black Widow. And so she wouldn't have been introduced in this show. She would have been returning in this show.
When is Black Widow coming out now? Is it 2023, 2024? Do we know
it's June.
June. Oh,
June.
So like real soon.
A month away.
Is that going to be theaters, Disney Plus?
They mentioned it's going to be on Disney Plus All Access, so you have to pay that little extra to get it. And theaters.
Well, I feel bad about it, but I will pay a little extra to get Black Widow. It's sad, but it's true.
No, I can't pay $30 for it. I can't do it.
Are we going to talk about how Sharon Carter is a Skrull or maybe not?
She's not a Skrull.
She's not a Skrull. She's not a Skrull. She just
crooked.
So yes. This is Jim's thing because Jim grew up with like you'd say Englehart, but I associate her with Mark Waid.
Oh,
that sort of dark, bitter, cynical Sharon Carter, who's more like a spy, whose allegiance is always kind of gray. I have to confess, so I wanted her to not be a villain in this show, but I'm not particularly attached to Sharon Carter. I'm one of the original Bernie bros, by which I mean I wanted Steve Rogers to marry Bernie back in the 80s, his Jewish.
Oh wow, really, Bernie? Come on.
For sure. So Sharon Carter does nothing for me, but I was really disappointed that they made her a heel turn in here. I presume that they're going to use that in the Armor Wars show, which we know is coming, or the Secret Invasion. She could be a Skrull, but probably not. She's probably just a shady.
No, I think she's just bitter over the government turning its back on her, and so she's like, "Fuck you, I'm going to get mine."
I think she's going to pull that face off. It'll be Justin Hammer.
There you go.
See, to Jason's point, my very first issue of Captain America that I bought on a launch because I had an extra $2 in my pocket. The X-Men were like that day, and I was like, okay, I'll give this book a shot. Was Captain America 451, which is part 2 of the Man Without a Country storyline, and it emblazoned on my brain. So Sharon being a little bit of a bad girl, I'm totally cool with that.
Yeah.
Like being a little jaded and cynical as a contrast to Steve, I think it's great.
Well, this explains why when I asked Jim if you could only read one Captain America comic in the entire run, what one would it be? And he told me that one, and now I know why.
Good choice. Good choice.
It opens up, and he doesn't have the suit. And if you read all 4 issues, like he meets up with Dr. Doom, and he gets a broken down Captain America suit and saves Bill Clinton. It's great. It's great comic book.
Who's the writer on this one?
This is Mark Waid and Ron Garney and all.
Yeah, that's a great run by Waid. That's probably one of his and then I guess the return after this was probably his best Cap moments.
Waid was a great. Wade's a great writer. I loved his work in Captain America, but but I never got into Sharon Carter particularly.
Cap's got a lot of girlfriends. I mean, that was a good bad.
It wasn't that. It was just. I think it was. I don't know why. In the show, now setting the comics aside for a minute, the reason why I don't get into Sharon Carter in the show is because she's never going to live up to her aunt, who is the guiding light as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. And like no one's ever going to come close to Peggy Carter. So yeah.
Yeah, and this is definitely where the show and the comics are different because in the comics, Sharon Carter has been the recurring love interest
for sure
since the Mark Waid run. Ed Brubaker uses her.
Yeah.
Like Tony Rosenthal has only shown up maybe a handful of times since Steve Englehart's run ended.
Yeah,
and I have a fondness for the character too, but I just kind of like someone who's a little different.
It's all right. No, yeah. If I can go back and read the Bernie comics anytime I want. Like that's the beauty of comics. Yeah. So it's all good.
So touching on Peggy Carter, like that's why I think that the Sharon Carter we've seen in this series might be a Skrull.
Okay.
Because I don't think they want to. They don't want to touch. Like the center even says, like the Carter name is honored and hallowed. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
So like
that would make her a great villain, though.
there can still be Sharon Carter and also Skrull Sharon Carter. There can be two Sharon Carters.
Well, I mean, here's the question though. Do we we know it's supposed to be what it's supposed to be? What if it isn't Skrulls?
We're kind of going down the Mephisto road here, right?
Right.
And
I'm not interested. Not interested.
Yeah, and I think that's like I want to watch the show. Jacob is my guiding star here. I want to watch the show for what it is, not for all of the theories about what we want it to be, right? And this killed us in a while for WandaVision because we were like, oh, it's the twins, and we're getting to see the kids back, and no, like they don't come back. Like we have to judge it on what it is, and I thought that Sam's story was great. Bucky's story was great. Isaiah's story was solid. I liked the museum bit at the end, but I thought Sharon and Zemo and Walker were badly written in the end.
So the fight with oh, sorry, Lewis, go ahead.
No, I mean they didn't kill him. That's always the biggest problem with all the villains. They kill him at the end.
Well, well, I didn't need him to die. I just thought that Walker gets to walk away with no consequences for his actions.
I think Zemo is where he wants to be.
I think to Mike's point, the thing that we are going to look back 10 years from now and be like, okay, we're going to talk about Falcon and the Winter Soldier, is that it enters the discourse. It enters the racial discourse at an opportune moment where people who have not heard of the Tuskegee experiments or Henrietta Lacks can now be exposed to knowledge through fiction. And that's the greatest thing this show is giving us. It's giving us these opportunities to educate and to talk about real issues guised up in full color spandex.
There was a great Twitter thread, right, from a woman whose father watched the episode, and he was a diehard conservative, like GOP guy, right? And he had to like come around. Like Sam's speech kind of gave the guy second thoughts, and it's a teachable moment. Yeah.
I hate you guys are being so deep, and I'm gonna say, wasn't the fight with Buttroke kind of a letdown?
Sharon kills Carly and she kills Batroc. Like
no, she shot Batroc. He fell down. We never saw where his wound was.
Right.
They can bring him back.
They can, and I would love to see that, but I think but whatever.
Also, how does Carly die from a couple quick gunshots? Like, can't they? Super soldiers take a couple.
Super soldiers are really tough, but they're not invulnerable.
Yeah, and they heal fast and like.
But the problem the shooting thing has always been a weird thing. It's like, they can take a bullet, but they say Cap can take an hour's worth of a metal baseball bat beating and not even shrug from that. Like, I don't know much about much, but I know a bullet is probably going to be less than an hour beating with a baseball bat, an iron baseball bat. Come on.
We have to put away our official handbook to the Marvel Universe here because that has zero relevance to the television.
The plot no longer needed Carly, so she died.
That's why she died.
I was looking for a meme that said the plot killed her.
She was killed. She was killed by plot.
Now, to Mike's point, Batroc the Leaper was done the dirtiest in all the people in this show. He's been a chump every time he shows up. Yes. And I love Batroc the Leaper. Yes. And I'm hoping that he does show up at some point, or was a Skrull that got shot.
It is Batroc the Leaper
Batroc the Leaper.
Okay.
Well, it's
if you're ever in Pittsburgh, go to Oakland and Phantom of the Attic in their comic shop, and every face they have covered with like a little face of Batroc the Leaper.
Oh my God! Yeah. It's my mecca.
So, I mean, are we going to talk about how George St. Pierre was the greatest choice ever for that character? I mean,
yeah,
it's pretty on point. Yeah.
Oh, and he's French. Well, he's Canadian French, but that's all right.
Yeah.
And his name is Jay, and his name is George.
Like, come on! I thought that was brilliant, and I want to see more of him. I want a cocky mercenary to come back out because I think that's one of the best traits of him. And just hey, I fought Captain America with my bare hands. And like that sounds crazy.
And let's give him a win. Let's just give him a W. Like he's an undercard guy. Like just to feel good, the villain gets the win one.
Well,
just
I'm
one.
sure you guys remember like the famous Batroc single issue, right? Like that came out a few years back, where he gets hired by these mercenaries to fight Captain America, and they're like, "You lose to Captain America every single time." He says, "Yeah, but I fought him, which is more than any of you, right?" And he gets in this fight with Cap, and there's a point where he actually has Cap on the ropes, but he's being paid not to defeat Captain America, but just to keep him busy. And he's like, I should run right now. I should run. If I run now, I win. But I can't run because he's open. And he has to go back into the fight and try to finish Cap off, and of course lose and get defeated. But it's a wonderful glimpse into his head. Like I know exactly where I stand. I will always be inferior to Captain America, but I can't resist taking the shot. I just can't. Maybe this is my day. Today is the day that Batroc wins. This is Batroc.
Yeah, it is not a just universe where U.S. Agent gets a redemption arc, and Batroc does not.
Yeah. Batroc. This
Is it Batroc or Batroc? Because I'm saying it both ways somehow.
I always call it Batroc. 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 I would like to see a scene, and this is an obscure movie. I would like to see a scene where Batroc clears, just wipes out a whole bunch of other villains, just to prove how much of a badass he is. There is a movie called Undercover Blues.
Yeah, I know.
And in it, Stanley Tucci plays a local thug named Muerte.
Yeah.
And he is this absolute badass because there's this one scene where he kicks the butt of like 3 or 4 other just badass thugs in a bar.
Yeah.
But he can't pull anything over on the 2 main characters played by Dennis Quaid and Kathleen Turner because they are freaking super spies.
They call him Morty.
They call him Morty because he's just so fun. But he is otherwise just this amazing badass character.
I don't think we can top Undercover Blues, Mike. We should play the outro music.
We should play. Oh, I didn't play the intro music, and that's goddamn it. I'm a high production value quality podcast, and I didn't play that music. I'm ashamed of myself. All right, hold on to your butts. That's how you know it's a quality podcast, folks. I'm sorry, Jacob. You had a closing thought there, sir.
So if we could just get a little short, like YouTube Batroc scene of him being put in prison with other named villains, they don't even have to have shown up in the MCU. Just have them be some various random name. Yeah, Paste Pot Pete and all that.
See,
I'll him go into prison and just wipe the floor with them.
Jacob, I'll raise you. I'll raise you and make it more economical. Just have him beat Daredevil. Daredevil can take the L.
Yeah.
He gets his ass kicked in almost every episode except for the end. Like he can get beaten up by Batroc, and then Batroc is just like he gets the W. There we go.
You talk about how they kept like Vincent D'Onofrio and a couple of other dudes, and they're working in the MCU
I'm
in
not
different
believing
canon.
That's
Oh, you don't believe that?
That's rumor. Okay. That is scurrilous rumors.
Until I see it.
Scurrilous. Okay.
Scurrilous. Because look, we're gonna get all excited, and it's gonna be Mephisto all over again. I'm not kidding with that. You know, in the words of Eddie Murphy, the guy, you're not getting this with a banana in the tailpipe. All right, you're not going for that trick. No,
it'll wind up being like Kevin James or something as Kingpin.
I love how Mephisto has entered our lingo as the red herring speculation. Yeah, exactly. It's like the dream that we want. We want this great, cool, it's all connected plot, and then it's just a sad trombone at the end, and we're like, God damn it, Mephisto again.
Thank you. We now need to make a T-shirt of that. It was Mephisto all along.
It was Mephisto all along.
You know, it would be great if we had a merch store where maybe an artist who's on our panel regularly would draw these things for prints and T-shirts.
Yeah, I'll have something for you in half an hour.
Coffee mugs.
Good Lord, who would have thought?
I just want it to be like a sad Mephisto face. Like he's always grinning, like Revulse the smile.
I got to tell you, I think in the MCU, if Mephisto shows up, it's going to be like Russell Brand. It's like sitting on a beach, vaping, drinking a complicated drink, going, "Oh, I don't really have time to get involved in all the superhero stuff. Sorry, there's a cute girl down the way I'm trying to, flirt with." So you
I
guys
was
go
thinking
on.
of Russell Crowe for a second. I was like, isn't he in the new Thor? But no, Russell Brand's the thin, angry one, the atheist. Yes, I remember him. Yes.
Yeah.
They would make a great kind of buddy cop movie, though, wouldn't they?
They would.
With Lil Nas on that dancing on.
Oh, I love Lil Nas. I love him so much. I can't help it. They played that song, Old Town Road, at my kid's school for socially distanced gym class. So he just comes home and he's loving the song and he's like, "Hey, Mom, get me this sheet music. I'll play it on piano." And my wife, God bless her, she's from North Dakota, so she downloads this sheet music and, "Have you read these lyrics?" And I follow him on Twitter because I'm a horrible person with too much free time. And someone on Twitter was saying Lil Nas X, "I don't like what's in your latest video because you do this and Little Town Road, that's an anthem for all these kids. And you're talking about this, and this." And he just, "I didn't play that song for your kids. That's on you. That's bad parenting." Well, and no one else is laughing except for Lewis. But I'm glad.
I'm right there with you. There was that clip that Samuel L. Jackson did of why are you letting your kids watch Django?
Yeah. Hey, we were talking about Django and Lil Nas X, and we've been talking for an hour and 8 minutes now. We should probably wrap up. I think we've covered Falcon and Winter Soldier finale, as well as we're going to cover it. So, Lewis, Jim, Jason, Mike, Jacob, who came from the audience today. Appreciate all you guys being here. Anyone have closing thoughts before we wrap it up?
Please join
This was
the
super
BAMF Podcast Patreon.
Oh, there you go. That's a good closing thought.
And we also have a Buy Me a Coffee page. If you don't want to commit to the commitment of a relationship, just buy me a coffee. It's like a one-night stand. It's easy.
I can respect that.
Yeah. All right, this is a good note. We should everyone's quiet. Everything got out. We good. All right, thanks, folks, checking us out. We will catch you next time on the BAMF Podcast.